bolt up. Because what's happening with the Chargers right now feels like it's turning into something way bigger than just another routine offseason shuffle. This does not look like random roster maintenance. It feels like pieces are moving for a reason. It feels like there's an idea taking shape. And when you step back and look at everything together, you can feel it. This team might be building towards something a whole lot more serious than people expected just a few days ago.
There's a quarterback bet that's still alive. There's a clear change happening inside the offensive structure. There's a departure that says a lot about where one position group is headed. And right in the middle of all of it, there's still one glaring need that has not gone away. That's what makes this so interesting. These are not disconnected headlines. These are signals. These are clues. And for Chargers fans, this is exactly the kind of stretch where you start asking the big question. Are we watching the early stages of a real plan coming together? The first major sign comes with Trey Lance returning on a one-year deal, a contract that, according to Adam Schefter, could be worth up to $6.7 million. And that matters, because this is not just about bringing back a backup quarterback. This is about the Chargers deciding there is still something worth exploring here. They are keeping the door open on a player who came into the league with massive expectations, but who has almost never been given a real runway to show what he can become. And that's the part that makes this so fascinating. Trey Lance entered the NFL as a top pick out of North Dakota State, a player many believed could grow into a franchise quarterback. But instead of a clean development path, his career became a mess of interruptions. Injuries, limited opportunities, roster changes, and stops with different teams where he barely saw the field. Rather than being fully tested, he became one of those names people talked about more for what might have been than what actually happened on Sundays. So when the Chargers bring him back, you have to look deeper. You have to ask what they believe they still see. Last season, fans got a small glimpse when Lance played in the season finale against the Denver Broncos while the starters were resting for the playoffs. The stat line was not eye-popping. 20 completions on 44 attempts, 146 passing yards, and 1 interception against one of the league's top defenses. But maybe the point isn't whether that performance was good enough to crown him or bad enough to bury him. Maybe the point is simpler than that. Maybe the Chargers saw enough to believe this story is not over. And that's what makes the move interesting for this fan base. This team does not seem eager to slam every door shut right away. Instead, it looks like they want to preserve certain possibilities while the roster continues to evolve. Bringing Trey Lance back feels like one of those calculated bets. Not a promise, not a guarantee, not some wild fantasy being sold as fact, but a controlled gamble on a player whose NFL story has never truly been given a fair chance to unfold. And let's be honest, Chargers fans, that opens up a real conversation. Is this just a depth move? Or is this organization quietly thinking there may still be a real upside, play hiding in plain sight? Because teams do not keep investing in this kind of profile unless they believe there is still a spark there. And if there is a spark there, man, that suddenly becomes one more storyline worth watching very, very closely. But if Trey Lance represents one open possibility, the situation on the offensive line feels much more urgent. Because right now, it is hard to look at this offense and say the protection plan is finished. And that is exactly why the name Joel Bonio carries so much weight in this conversation. The Chargers have made moves inside. They've done something. But have they done enough? That's the real issue. Yes, Ty H. Dosh arrives as an upgrade at center. Yes, Cole Strange gives them another body and another option at guard. But those moves do not erase the doubts. They do not wipe away the uncertainty. And when you have a quarterback like JUS 10 Herbert, leaving major questions on the interior of the line is like driving a sports car with loose bolts under the hood. It might still move, but everybody knows that's a dangerous way to live. That's where Joel Bonio changes the temperature of the room. According to the source material, Matt Bowen of ESPN still ranks him as the 5th best free agent available, and the resume is flat out ridiculous. We're talking about a 12-year pro, 178 NFL starts, and a 96.4% pass block win rate in 2025, which ranked 3rd among 65 qualifying guards. He allowed only 2 sacks. 2. That's not a marginal upgrade. That's not a luxury add. That's a veteran answer. That's a plug-and-play stabilizer. That's the kind of presence that can change the feel of a room on day one. And the impact goes beyond just one position. If the Chargers do not add enough to the line in free agency, They become easier to read going into the draft. That matters, because once a team becomes predictable, the pressure builds fast. A move for Bonio would not just patch a weakness, it would change the strategy board. It would give the front office breathing room. It would allow them to attack the draft from a position of flexibility instead of desperation. And that can be the difference between a smart offseason and one that leaves fans saying, "Why did everybody see this coming except them?" Now sure, the source does throw in one caution flag. Maybe Bonio is not the perfect schematic fit for the desired system. Fine, but at this point, perfect may not be the standard. Necessary might be the standard. Immediate help might be the standard. And if that's the case, then the Chargers should absolutely be looking at this like a golden opportunity still sitting on the table. So here's the question for Chargers fans, and this is where I need to hear from you. If Joel Bonio is still realistically available, do you bring him in right now to protect Justin Herbert and raise the floor of this entire offensive line? Or do you sit tight and hope the draft solves it? Because that answer says a lot about how aggressive you think this team needs to be from here. And then there's the tight end room. And this, honestly, might be one of the clearest signs that the Chargers are not just tweaking things, they are redefining them. Tyler Kuyunclin leaving for the Detroit Lions is not just another roster move at the bottom of the chart. It feels like a line in the sand. It feels like a page turn. It feels like the team has decided what this position group is supposed to look like now. When Conklin originally signed, there was at least some reason for hope. There was talk of versatility. There was some intrigue. There was a belief that maybe he could bring a little more juice than some previous experiments at the position. But it never clicked. It never took off. In 13 games, he caught just 7 passes, and before long, the picture became clear. He was not the one shaping the future of this room. That future, instead, looks like it belongs to Oronde J.D. Son. And the numbers back it up. 49 catches, 664 yards, and 3 touchdowns, with an average of 13.6 yards per catch. That is not random production. That is a player building something real. That is a player forming a connection with Justin Herbert and showing he can become a meaningful part of this offense. And what makes it even more exciting is that the source says he entered the pros needing to improve as a blocker, yet still managed to rise quickly and carve out a clear role. Then you add Charlie Kolar, and suddenly the shape of the room makes even more sense. Kolar is described as a movable chess piece, someone who can help in multiple formations and bring real blocking value. That matters because it complements Gadsden instead of crowding him. It opens things up. It gives the offense another layer. It helps explain why the Chargers were comfortable letting Conklin walk. And that may be the strongest message of all. They did not act like a team desperate to keep stacking names at tight end. They acted like a team that already sees the direction of the room. They have Gadsden, they have Kolar, and they still have Tanner McLaughlin and Thomas Yasmin on the roster. That does not mean the position is untouchable forever, but it does suggest that, right now, this coaching staff sees a path. They see upside. They see a structure they believe in. And finally, we get to a draft possibility that ties this whole offensive conversation together. Because when a name like Emmanuel Pregnan starts getting linked to teams with interior offensive line needs, it becomes really easy to understand why Chargers fans would immediately pay attention. The source says the Oregon lineman has a lot of talent, is expected to be selected in the 2026 NFL Draft, and is being viewed as a target for teams needing help on the interior. Well, hello. That sure sounds relevant. Within the Chargers' reality, that connection makes sense fast. Throughout this entire conversation, one thing keeps showing up again and again. The offensive line has been addressed, but not fully solved. That's the key. The team has started working on the issue, yes, but the sense of total security still isn't there. And when that feeling remains, any talented interior prospect instantly becomes part of the discussion. That's why Pregnan matters here. Not because anything is confirmed, not because anyone should turn a possibility into a done deal, but because he represents another path, another solution, another sign that this team may be building the offense in layers. Some moves in free agency, some internal bets, and maybe one more major answer coming through the draft. That's an important distinction. It shows the Chargers may not be locked into one single plan. They may be trying to create a broader, smarter mix of immediate stability and future growth. And if that's the case, then this is where things get really fun for the fan base. Because now the conversation is not just about what the Chargers have already done. It's about what these moves suggest they still could do. That's the magic of an offseason like this. One move sets up the next. One departure reveals a new priority. One roster decision creates a bigger question. And before you know it, the whole board starts to look different. So when you pull all of this together, the message is hard to ignore. The Chargers are not frozen. They are not drifting. They are not just watching the offseason happen around them. They are making choices. They are reshaping key parts of the offense. They are keeping certain upside bets alive. They are letting certain rooms reset. And they are still staring at an offensive line situation that could get one more major twist through free agency or the draft. That is why this moment matters. Because the feeling around this team is changing. And if the next piece falls into place, whether that's more protection, another smart addition, or one more offensive move nobody sees coming, then this whole thing could start looking a lot more dangerous in a hurry. So now I'm throwing it to you, Chargers fans. What move matters most from here? Do you believe in Trey Lance as a worthwhile long-term gamble? Do the Chargers need to go all in on Joel Bonio? Are you bought in on Oronde J.D. Son becoming a real weapon in this offense? And should the front office be eyeing Emmanuel Pregnant as part of the next step up front? Drop your take in the comments. Fire this to another Chargers fan, and let's talk about it. Because if these pieces really start locking into place, this offense might be way more explosive than people thought at the start of this whole process.